r/AskReddit. Serious, what are some cryptid/ghost/unexplained stories you'd be willing to share? One afternoon I was at work. I walked past a room with a window in the door and automatically glanced in the window. There was a woman standing in the room. Except there are only 3 people in the building and the other 2 were in the office behind me. I took a couple steps, realized what I had just seen, and backed up quickly, but by the time I got back to the window the room was empty. There was only one door, and when I opened it the room was empty. At the same building, a coworker was telling me that she was in the office right around the corner from that same room. She couldn't see the door, but she could see the shadow of the door on the floor as it slowly opened and closed. She was the only one in the building at the time and she refused to check. I arrived about an hour later, and she asked me to check the door, and it was still locked. I worked there about 3 years, and every single one of us had stories. We heard voices in empty rooms. Once we were sitting in the office, and we heard somebody breathing in an empty corner. It was common to be in one of the rooms, and think somebody had just walked into the room, only to look up, and find that the room was empty except for you. I had one manager who scoffed at all of our stories. She did not believe us when we told her there was something fairly benign but creepy in the building. We were sitting in the office. She scoffed and loudly said, "If there's anything in here, prove it." We all held our breath, kind of nervous, a bit scared but also curious. And just about the time my manager was getting that look on her face that said, "Ha, told you so," something was thrown out in the hallway. It took us several minutes to work up the courage before going to check and finding that a book that normally sat on a bookshelf near the front door had somehow gone from that bookshelf around the corner and halfway down the hallway. The manager never talked about it and quit shortly after that. I've since quit also, but last I heard they were still hearing voices and seeing shadows in the building. A shame you don't still work there. If you have any friends that do, I'd love to see what might happen if someone brought in a high quality recorder and let it go. In a lot of cases with office buildings, air conditioners, heaters and even server racks produce infrasound, low frequencies on the very edge of human hearing, that are known to provoke a fight or flight response, feelings of unease and even hallucinations in some people with enough exposure. I mix a constant 20 Hz tone into the audio track for the haunted house I set up around Halloween, to add some extra unease. It seems to work pretty well. When I was 7 years old, my grandma was in the hospital dying. At the time my family was strapped for cash and my mom was pregnant, so only my dad went to California, where she lived, to see her before she died. The day that she died, we got a phone call from her with her wanting to talk to each of us saying how much she loved us. A few hours later, we got a call from family members saying that she had passed away. When we told them that we had just received a call from her a few hours prior, everybody was in disbelief, saying that she had been laying unconscious in the hospital bed all day and she could have never called, yet alone been able to articulate her thoughts to us. To this day we have no idea how she called us, and I don't think we ever will. This is so nice. I wonder if ghost calls work as well on cell phones as they do landlines. My aunt got a text from my grandpa that didn't even have a phone about 12 hours before he died. He had dementia and wouldn't even have been able to know who she was, but she still had gotten the text from him. So I would assume that the ghost calls can happen on the modern day phones. I grew up in an old house and my family definitely experienced events that were hard to explain. Besides all the usual noises and occasionally hearing your name being spoken, here's the top 2 weirdest things. My brother and I were teens, eating dinner in the kitchen. There was a glass of water on the counter. We heard a noise where the glass was, and both looked toward it, and we swore we saw it move an inch. As we were still looking and discussing it, the glass flew several feet across the counter and smashed onto the floor. Once when I was in college, and I was home for holidays, I was in the kitchen getting food prepared. I was home alone at that point and my brother was due home at any moment. I heard the front door open and close. I called out hello to my brother and heard nothing back. Then I saw a shadow pass by the kitchen into the hallway and I assumed my brother was being rude, so I followed and kept calling hello. I saw the shadow again turning another corner toward my brother's bedroom. I saw my brother's door closing. At this point I was calling out about what a jerk he was because we hadn't seen each other in months. I pushed the bedroom door open and uttered some insults. Haha, and the room, as well as the whole house, was empty. That was super chilling. I really had seen someone moving through the house. Flash forward 15 years later, and when my husband and I bought an oldish house, built in 1870, I was up in the 3rd floor arranging boxes, and I heard a very clear and very polite woman's voice say, "Well, hello there. Never saw or heard anything in this house since." Do UFO stories count? Fayette County, Tennessee. I can't remember exactly when, but it was after Cobain died and before I changed schools, so either spring of '94 or during the '94 to '95 school year. A yellow-orange, football-shaped UFO was over a field across the road from my house. I watched it from my bedroom window while on the phone with a buddy. He used his mom's line, pre-cell phone days lol, to call the local little airport, but they said there were no helicopters or anything weird on radar. After a while, it headed east towards Somerville and I couldn't see it anymore. The next day at school, a bunch of other kids had either seen it, or their uncle did, or whoever. Seriously, I would love it if anyone from that area remembers this. My dad told me this one. One day, when my dad was at home alone, he was going to eat one more thing before showering. He got some ulam, food in Filipino, because my dad is Filipino, and began eating. Then, there was a blackout. So he got a candle and continued eating. He saw something white to his right. He looked to his right and saw nothing. He continued eating, but it was still there. He got a bit nervous and began eating faster. It was still there. He ate even faster. When my dad finished, he quickly put the bowl in the sink and looked in the mirror. He then noticed there was a piece of rice stuck next to his eye. I shared this on Reddit a couple of times. I'll make it short this time. 6 or so years ago, weird shit started happening in my mother's apartment. I lived there alone. She was lived with her BF, but kept the apartment anyway. The door to my bedroom would open or close on its own. At some point in the night, it would close or open at random intervals, with the door handle moving and all that. And not like slowly, sometimes it would full on slam shut or open. I tried everything, closing all the windows to see if maybe it was the wind. Nope. Seeing if there was anyone else in the room. Never found anybody. Plus the room on the other side was empty except for a wardrobe. Hell, it even happened more than a few times in front of a friend. The friend in question also told me my lamp started to switch on and off when I was sleeping. Not like in the movies where the lamp malfunctions. She said it was like it was turning on, then off, then on, etc. Toward the end of this, the sofa that was right beside the door moved by itself while I was on it in the middle of the night while I was on Skype on camera. The door kept opening and closing a few times a night for a few days, then it stopped. Also, I kept having sleep paralysis with visual and auditory hallucination at the time lol. I honestly could have thought I was simply going crazy, but I had eyewitnesses. Never understood what happened this week. Never happened again. Couple years ago our TV started behaving really weirdly. It started with just pausing, fast forwarding and rewinding what we were watching, flicking through channels, or changing the volume by itself. Then it gradually stepped up to putting horror movies on and entering the pin normally required for films rated above PG by itself. We changed the pin and then we would see the pin being typed incorrectly 3 times. Then it started flashing random pictures on the screen. One it did a lot was cat's eyes. Don't remember the rest. Have no idea how it got access to the pictures either. I doubt these random pictures would be stored anywhere in the TV. We called out the TV company multiple times and they thought we were crazy until they came out and saw it for themselves. No one could figure out what it was. They kept recording what it was doing and sending it around and nobody knew what was causing it or how to fix it. In the end we had to get a new box. Not had anything like that happen since and still have no clue what caused it, but it was terrifying at the time. Was it a smart TV? Or was it hooked up to a smartish box such as a TiVo or modern DVR? My money is on a prankster either having a remote for the device or used an app on their phone while connected to the device's network. That's why it typed in the incorrect pin 3 times. The pictures could have been downloaded and stored on the device or accessed from a storage drive connected to the network. It was a Sky TV box. I don't know whether it's possible for it to be hacked, but they told us the only explanation would be that it was picking up a neighbor's signal and carrying out whatever they were pressing on their remote, but because of the specifics of what was going on it doesn't seem likely that that's all it would have been. It was going on literally all the time. The TV was switched on for maybe a week or so if it was a prankster they would have to have a lot of time on their hands. There was a really weird occurrence at my dad's house a few years ago. He awoke to the sound of dogs barking and realized the neighborhood dogs were barking at something that was moving parallel to the road. When his own started to bark he went outside to see what was up. Across the street is pretty much all forest, except a church directly across the street that at the time was just a gravel lot. My dad was too far away to see anything, but in the dead of night he could definitely hear the sound of someone running at full tilt across the gravel. A few things freaked him out from this one. Whatever it was definitely ran on 2 feet. Try having a dog run on gravel vs a human, and you can tell the difference. And it was big. Both myself and he have witnessed large animals like bears and moose running through the underbrush, and according to him, it sounded like it was of a similar size to those creatures too. It was easily running somewhere around 40 to 50 miles per hour in the clearing of the lot, then slowed down again as it went back into the woods. He was able to compare the speed because the road itself is 45 miles per hour limit, so it was going just as fast as a passing car. The final thing, its huffing and gasping was so loud he could hear it from his front door and was obviously not human. We looked online later to compare its sound to other animals and it really didn't sound like anything he'd ever heard before. The freakiest part was the almost synchronous reactions the dogs had. He's never heard dogs react like that before. Both him, my stepmom, my stepbrother, and several of our neighbors all can account for hearing the strange barking from the dogs, but it was only my dad who heard what they were after. Nothing happened like that since, and I've never personally witnessed anything like it. We do like right on the border of the Cascade Mountain Range, and are surrounded by park and federal land. If you want to get an idea of where this took place,